South Korea knows its way around a World Cup. The Taeguk Warriors are making their 11th straight appearance in 2026, but this one comes with some extra pressure. This will likely be the last World Cup for their unquestioned beloved leader and star, Yang Min-hyeok. For a team that's been perpetually stuck between the group stage and a round of 16, will this be the year they make a deep run and give their legend a deserved send-off? Welcome to Kickback Soccer Media's World Cup Capsules, where you'll learn everything you need to know about all 48 of the national teams competing at the 2026 World Cup. From the history of the game, the nation's current World Cup trajectory, unsung heroes, and cultural moments. I'm David Goss, and today we are talking about the Taeguk Warriors of South Korea. Like I mentioned, the face of the national team is Yang Min-hyeok. Sonny is loved by every fan base he represents, whether it's Bayer Leverkusen, Tottenham, LAFC, or the South Korean national team. With an incredible skill set, the ability to score big goals in huge moments, and a personality that embodies humility, hard work, a little bit of silliness, and respect, he's a star who has transcended the game. When Son made his move to LAFC in 2025, media credential applications for LAFC home games increased by 30%, including 10 Korean outlets who now cover the team on a regular basis. Son's black LAFC home jersey quickly became the best-selling soccer shirt in the world, and the club doubled its YouTube audience, with more than 70% of the new followers joining from South Korea. So Sonny is special, but at age 33, this could be his final appearance on a World Cup stage. So the pressure is on to make this a memorable tournament. Luckily, South Korea knows a little bit about creating some World Cup magic. We're going to dive right into South Korea's best moment, the 2002 World Cup. They were awarded the tournament as a co-host with Japan, the first time ever that two countries would be joint hosts. This was going to be the first World Cup outside of Europe or the Americas. Japan and South Korea were originally competing to host and are, of course, massive political rivals with a former history of colonialism and war crimes between the two. But they were told by FIFA they either co-host or neither of them gets it. So they split the groups across Japan and South Korea. Daegu, South Korea, hosted the third place game. Seoul hosted the semifinal, with the other semifinal and final going to Japan. Things weren't great for South Korea going into the tournament. They got blown out in the Confederations Cup in 2001, losing 5-0. Then another friendly loss against Czech Republic, 5-0 as well, and they failed to win a game at the 2002 CONCACAF Gold Cup. But maybe it was home field advantage, but things improved incredibly once the tournament kicked off. They opened the World Cup with a 2-0 win over Poland, South Korea's first ever World Cup victory. They then drew the U.S. 1-1 in the second game with what has become a famous ice skating goal celebration, harkening back to the Winter Olympics earlier that year, in which a South Korean athlete felt he was cheated out of a gold medal by Apollo Anton Ono. They closed out the group stage, beating Portugal 1-0 to secure their spot in the knockout rounds. They then went on to beat Giants Italy 2-1 in the round of 16, tying the game in the 88th minute and then winning on a golden goal at the time. They then got past Spain in the quarterfinals thanks to penalties after a scoreless game. Now, Spain had 2 goals called off because of offside, and there are still huge claims from Spanish fans and other fans around the world that it was unfairly managed by the referees in favor of the home team. This would make them the first and still only Asian team to make a World Cup semifinal. They lost 1-0 to Germany to end their run, and they ended up losing to Turkey in the third place match. But the country fell in love with this squad, and the world fell in love with Korea's fans. Known as the Red Devils, a group I've been lucky enough to be adopted into once or twice for some big games, their traveling supporters are some of the most ardent and popular around the world. And the big man at the center of all of it was Guus Hiddink, national hero made honorary citizen by South Korea. Hiddink broke up cliques inside the team that were formed around the strict age hierarchy within the squad because of Korean culture. Hiddink always knew that the domestic-based talent was crucial. With the 2002 World Cup kicking off in late May, earlier than usual due to a rainy season, most of the best teams were full of players that came straight from their European campaigns. The K-League season, which usually starts in February and March, was delayed until July, meaning that upon returning from the Gold Cup, the coach had his players as much as he wanted. Quote, "To be in South Korea that summer was a pleasure and a privilege. Games were replayed nonstop, on the Seoul subway, in hairdressers, bars, and restaurants. People talking of nothing else took to the streets and then cleaned up at the end." In May 2002, South Korea's international image was dominated by the division of the peninsula. President Kim Dae-jung said, "The World Cup showed a dynamic and modern Korea, a place to visit and invest in. It helped set the scene for the next step, the Korean wave, K-pop, TV dramas, and movies that turned an outward-looking nation into a global cultural force." It is one of the most magical World Cup runs that you will remember fondly for decades on. And it's the type of magical run the Taeguk Warriors are hoping to go on for Sonny this summer. 2002 is definitely the biggest turning moment in South Korean history, but that history goes way, way back. The game was brought to South Korea by who else? The British. The Royal Navy introduced the game in 1882 and was brought into schools in 1902. Korean players were forced to play for Japan during occupation, but the Korean FA was established in 1948 after the country's independence, and they appeared at the 1948 Olympics in London and beat Mexico 5-3. In 1954, South Korea became the first independent Asian nation to qualify for the World Cup, but unfortunately they lost both their games by a combined score of 16-0. They went on to win the inaugural Asian Cup in 1956 and then hosted and won it again in 1960. They did not win it again until 2019. In 1966, they withdrew from qualifying in the World Cup to avoid playing against North Korea. North Korea would go on to have a successful World Cup. It caused a ton of panic inside of Korea, and it actually led to the Korean CIA creating its own soccer team to try and build up players to compete against North Korea in the future. South Korea had moderate success in Asia in the 60s and 70s, but the K-League is what really changed things for the country. 1983 was the first season of the K-League. It featured just 5 teams, including the now-defunct Hallelujah FC and Yukong Elephants, later known as Buncheon SK. Low attendance rates and financial issues plagued the competition's early years. It wasn't until 1996 that the league even turned professional. Soon after, there was an uptick in the competition's reputation. The national government announced a decentralization policy to boost the sport's popularity after the country was confirmed as host of the 2002 World Cup that same year. The tactic worked and the league grew exponentially. In the modern era, it's never been more popular. In 2023, the K-League announced it attracted 1.83 million fans across 176 games throughout the season. That smashed the previous record of 1.82 million spectators in 228 matches in 2019. That is almost a 2,500 person per game average capacity leap. Well, the road to 2026 for South Korea was a cruise. They dominated the second round of qualifying and went 6-4-0 in the third round, sealing an undefeated qualifying campaign. But there was a coach firing during the middle of that journey. Coming out of the 2022 World Cup, the FA hired Jurgen Klinsmann as head coach. He lost his first 5 matches, all friendlies, against non-Asian clubs. Uruguay, Peru, Colombia, El Salvador, and Wales were on the schedule. But he regained control of the ship, guiding the team through an undefeated first half of the second round of qualifying. But in 2024, the Taeguk Warriors lost to Jordan in the semifinals of the Asian Cup without registering a shot on goal. They were playing, quote, zombie football, and there were reports of infighting within the squad, especially after the news that Kang-in, up-and-coming superstar, had injured the legend's son's finger over a table tennis dispute. With all of this, the FA decided to part ways with Klinsmann. Quote, when it comes to bringing out the best in the national team, managing players and his work habits, Klinsmann did not live up to our expectations of a national team head coach, nor did he demonstrate leadership. We decided that Klinsmann was unlikely to improve as head coach in terms of his abilities and work ethic, said head of the KFA, Chung Mung-gyu. Hong Myung-bo, the 2002 Bronze Ball and World Cup Best 11 player, was hired to replace Jurgen Klinsmann. He's coached Ulsan Hyundai to 2 K-League titles. He had a brief stint as the national team manager back in 2013 as well. He was booed as coach to open qualifying, and the players were upset. Kim Min-jae, star center back, went over to the fans at the end of the game and asked them to tone it down before walking away shaking his head. Quote, "I was not being aggressive at all. I was just a bit disappointed that some people wanted us to fail," he said. The captain was also upset. "At least when we're playing at home, we shouldn't be creating our own enemies," said Son. But there's still public skepticism and expectations feel low. National legend Ji-sung Park said in an interview, quote, "We weren't always a team that reached the round of 16. But based on the current roster, I think it's reasonable to set the goal of the quarterfinals. Naturally, it'd be good to aim higher if possible, but considering the national team's current state, targeting passage from the group stage first seems like the most realistic thing." Yes, Son is the star, but there's other great talent on this team as well, including Kim Min-jae, as well as Lee Kang-in, who we talked about before, and Wolves forward Hwang Hee-chan. But when you're talking about young players to watch in South Korea, you have to touch on the South Korean policy of conscription. Every male citizen is required to do 18 to 21 months of military service before they turn 28 years old, unless exempt. Past exemptions have been given out to the 2002 World Cup team for their semifinal run, for Olympic medals, for winning Asian Games gold medals, which is what was done for Son right as he approached his age 28 birthday. The current crop of young stars is headlined by Yang Min-Hyeok, a 19-year-old winger with Tottenham who currently is playing on loan at Portsmouth. In 2024, at just 18 years old, he made his pro debut, and he was voted one of the 3 best players in the league. He, of course, won Young Player of the Year, the youngest to ever win it. He had 38 appearances, 12 goals, and 6 assists in that debut season. He went on to sign a 6-year contract with Tottenham. Of course, many people, cliche and easy, started to call him the next Son. He made his Korea debut in World Cup qualifying against fellow World Cup qualifiers Jordan at 18 years old. He spent his first year in England on loan at QPR, where he made 14 appearances, scored 2 goals, and had an assist, and is spending this year with Portsmouth, where he's got 8 appearances, 2 goals, and an assist already. Well, we've got a lot of categories here that we like to do for every single show, covering every single team qualified for the World Cup. We didn't know where to put this one, but we thought this story was too good not to tell. So here goes. South Korea hosted the Asian Cup in 1960 and successfully retained the title, beating South Vietnam, Israel, and Republic of China in the process. However, the South Korean players received fake medals upon their victory instead of the gold medals they'd been promised. Quote, "They were coated with cheap gold which peeled off easily," said Park Kwang-gwa, who played in that 1960 team. The players upset just gave the fakes back to the KFA. The KFA promised to give them real medals, but this did not occur. South Korea has not won an Asian Cup since this moment, and many people blame the curse of the fake medals. In 2014, the KFA started issuing replacement pure gold medals. They gave out 6 to former players or their families prior to the 2015 Asian Cup. However, South Korea lost that tournament in the final after being beaten 2-1 by Australia. The KFA handed out 4 more prior to the start of the 2019 Asian Cup, but an official has denied that the latest awards were made to try and help improve the prospects of the team at the current tournament. Quote, "It happened a long time ago, so it's quite a challenge to locate the family members of the players," he said, with 8 members of the 1960 squad yet to receive their gold medals. South Korea, of course, have not won the AFC Asian Cup since, and it has been attributed to the curse of the fake gold medals. Well, while famously many center backs or defensive midfielders will wear the number 4 on a soccer field, you're not going to see that on the South Korean national team because the number 4 is avoided because it sounds like the word for death in Korean. Well, the Koreans avoided death in terms of the group of death at the World Cup. brought into a Group A with host Mexico, South Africa, and the winner of a European playoff. The path to the knockout rounds is there. Well, the team will be camped out in Mexico. All 3 group stage games will occur inside the borders of Mexico, and maybe this team doesn't have the full talent to make a 2002 run, but they'll feel like the group stage is possible to overcome and anything can happen after that. Well, that's it for today. Make sure to follow us at Kickback Soccer and First Touch for all of our World Cup content, and make sure to follow right here on the podcast feed. We are doing one of these podcasts for every single team at the 2026 World Cup. We've also got our initial group analysis coming out of the World Cup draw of how we think every single group will match up.